I'm Heather Williams, 34, a real estate agent in Chicago who's built my career helping others find their dream homes. For 5 years, I faithfully paid my parents' mortgage, ensuring they kept the house I grew up in. Then came my sister Melissa's wedding day. The moment my father announced they were giving her our family home as a wedding gift, my world shattered. I stood frozen, champagne glass nearly slipping from my hand. Before I continue with how I discovered my parents had given away the home I was paying for, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a like and subscribe if you've ever felt your generosity was taken advantage of by family. Growing up in suburban Chicago, our family home on Maple Street represented stability and warmth. The two-story colonial with blue shutters wasn't luxurious, but it was filled with memories. My father Richard worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, while my mother Diane taught third grade at the local elementary school. Our lives followed predictable routines: Sunday dinners together, summer barbecues in the backyard, and holiday traditions that remained unchanged year after year. My sister Melissa arrived when I was 5 years old. From the beginning, there was an undeniable difference in how our parents treated us. I noticed it first on my 10th birthday when my requested sleepover party was downscaled to just 2 friends because parties are expensive. Yet 3 months later, Melissa's 5th birthday featured a rented bounce house, professional face painter, and 20 classmates. At the time, I attributed it to her being the baby of the family. As we grew older, the pattern continued. When I needed braces, I was told to wait another year because insurance would cover more later. Melissa got hers immediately. For my 16th birthday, I received driving lessons while Melissa's sweet 16, years later, came with a used but reliable Honda Civic. My parents justified these differences with various explanations. Timing was better, finances had improved, or most commonly, your sister needs more support than you do. You're so independent. That independence wasn't innate, it was cultivated by necessity. By high school, I understood that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. I started babysitting at 14, added a weekend job at the local grocery store at 16, and worked nearly full-time hours during college breaks. Meanwhile, Melissa's only responsibility was maintaining decent grades, which she barely achieved. College created an even wider divide. I attended State University on a partial scholarship, working 3 part-time jobs to cover the remainder. My parents contributed what they called what we can afford, about $1,500 per semester. For Melissa, they somehow found enough to cover full tuition at a private liberal arts college, explaining that she wouldn't manage with student loans like you can. Despite these disparities, I loved my family and accepted that this was simply our dynamic. I channeled my energy into building my own success, majoring in business, with a focus on real estate. The 2008 economic crisis hit just as I graduated, making entry into the housing market brutal. While many of my classmates abandoned their career plans, I persisted, taking a position as an administrative assistant at a small agency while earning my real estate license at night. Those early years tested every ounce of my determination. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with secondhand furniture, drove a car that broke down monthly, and subsisted on ramen and coffee. My first year as an agent yielded exactly 2 sales, barely covering my basic expenses. My parents offered little support beyond occasional home-cooked meals when I visited, always accompanied by gentle suggestions that I consider a more stable career path. The breakthrough came in my 3rd year when I connected with a wealthy client looking to downsize from her lakefront mansion. Her satisfaction with my service led to referrals among her social circle, and suddenly I found myself specializing in luxury properties. By age 28, I had moved into a comfortable downtown condo, leased a new car, and established myself as a rising star in Chicago real estate. During this time, Melissa drifted between various passion projects. After graduating with an art history degree, she worked briefly at a gallery before deciding it wasn't spiritually fulfilling. She then cycled through jobs as a barista, personal assistant, and eventually settled on becoming a yoga instructor, teaching a few classes weekly at an upscale studio. The inconsistent income didn't seem to affect her lifestyle, which featured frequent brunches, weekend trips, and a surprisingly extensive wardrobe. Her secret was simple. Our parents continued subsidizing her life. They covered her phone bill, helped with rent when she came up short, and provided a general safety net that allowed her carefree approach to adulthood. I noticed these things during family gatherings but said nothing, believing that eventually Melissa would need to stand on her own feet. Then came the first family crisis. My father called one evening, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. At 58, he'd been included in a company-wide downsizing. After 30 years with the same firm, he was unemployed with a severance package that would last 6 months at best. During the same period, my mother received a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, requiring expensive treatments partially covered by her school district insurance. "We're managing," he insisted during our weekly calls, but I could hear the strain in his voice. 3 months later, during a Sunday visit, I found past due notices on the kitchen counter while my mother was showing me her garden. When confronted, my parents reluctantly admitted they had fallen behind on mortgage payments. Pride had prevented them from sharing the full extent of their financial troubles. "It's temporary," my father assured me. "Once I find another position, we'll catch up." But accounting positions for professionals nearing retirement age proved scarce, and my mother's medical expenses continued mounting. After a sleepless night considering options, I made them an offer. I would cover their mortgage payments until they regained financial stability. Additionally, I'd help with medical bills not covered by insurance. The relief on their faces made any hesitation vanish. "This is still your inheritance someday," my mother said tearfully. "The house will always be yours eventually. We'll never forget this, Heather." What began as a temporary arrangement extended as my father's job search stretched from months into years. He eventually found part-time consulting work that provided some income, but no benefits. My mother reduced her teaching schedule to accommodate her health limitations. Each month, I transferred the mortgage payment directly to their bank, plus extra for utilities and groceries. During monthly visits, I helped with house maintenance and took them to appointments. Meanwhile, Melissa's life continued unaffected by our parents' struggles. Her visits home became less frequent as she pursued her latest interest, attending yoga retreats and spiritual workshops. When she did appear for holidays or birthdays, she brought token gifts but offered no substantial help. If she knew about my financial support, she never acknowledged it. Everything changed when Melissa met Brandon Taylor at a charity gala she attended with a wealthy client from her yoga studio. Brandon, son of a prominent family owning several car dealerships across the Midwest, was immediately taken with my sister's free-spirited personality and striking looks. Their whirlwind romance progressed rapidly, with Instagram posts showing them at exclusive restaurants, weekend getaways in his family's private plane, and courtside seats at Bulls games. "He's different from the others," my mother gushed during one of my visits. "So established, and from such a good family." I noticed my parents suddenly finding energy for activities that had previously become too difficult. Shopping trips with Melissa, dinner parties when Brandon visited, even repainting the guest room that had remained untouched for years. Their financial constraints seemed forgotten when it came to participating in my sister's exciting new relationship. 6 months after meeting, Brandon proposed with a diamond ring that probably cost more than my annual mortgage contributions. Just like that, wedding planning consumed our family's universe. The engagement party at the Taylor family's country club marked my first indication that something was shifting in our family dynamic. The sprawling golf course property, with its colonial clubhouse, normally hosted celebrities and politicians, not middle-class families like ours. Yet my parents navigated the space with surprising comfort, introducing themselves to Brandon's connections with practiced ease. I arrived alone, having scheduled the event between property showings. Despite my professional success, I felt distinctly out of place among guests who discussed summer homes and European vacations. My tailored black dress, which normally projected confidence during business meetings, seemed inadequate compared to the designer outfits surrounding me. "Heather, you finally made it," my mother called, waving from a group of women I didn't recognize. Her cheeks were flushed from champagne, her eyes bright with excitement. As I approached, I caught the tail end of their conversation. "The wedding gift is going to be absolutely perfect," my mother was saying. something they can build their future on. The women nodded approvingly before dispersing as I reached them. When I asked what wedding gift she meant, my mother patted my arm dismissively. Just some ideas we're considering. Nothing definite yet. Have you tried the crab cakes? They're divine. The subject change was obvious, but I didn't press further. Throughout the evening, I noticed multiple hushed conversations between my parents and Brandon's family, with meaningful glances and enthusiastic nodding. Whatever they were planning, I wasn't being included. 2 weeks after the engagement party, my father called asking if I could increase my monthly contribution temporarily. The roof is showing some wear, he explained. We've got a contractor coming to give an estimate, but we should probably handle it before winter. I agreed without hesitation, transferring an additional $2,000. However, when I stopped by unexpectedly the following weekend, there was no sign of roofing work or preparations. Instead, I found my mother and Melissa surrounded by wedding magazines, fabric swatches, and a half-empty bottle of champagne. Just getting some initial ideas, my mother explained, hastily gathering the materials. Nothing extravagant. The caterer's estimate visible on the coffee table suggested otherwise, with a per plate cost exceeding what most people spend on an entire dinner out. When I gently inquired about priorities, my mother became defensive. This is Melissa's special day. We've put aside some savings specifically for this. What's savings? I asked, knowing their financial situation intimately. You wouldn't understand. My father interjected from his recliner. Some things are worth stretching for. The conversation ended there, but my concerns grew. Over lunch the following week, I confided in my best friend Rachel Martinez. Am I crazy for feeling uneasy about this? I asked, pushing my salad around the plate. I mean, it's their money ultimately. Rachel's expression turned serious. Except it's not just their money, is it? You've been keeping them afloat for years. Have they ever talked about paying you back? That wasn't the arrangement, I admitted. I never expected repayment. But I also didn't expect them to suddenly find thousands for a lavish wedding. Sounds like you might be enabling them, Rachel suggested gently. Maybe it's time to set some boundaries around your contributions. I nodded, knowing she was right, but the thought of confronting my parents about money felt impossible. They had raised me, supported me in their way, and now needed my help. How could I suddenly attach strings to that assistance? As wedding planning intensified, so did the financial inconsistencies. My parents declined dinner invitations citing budget constraints, yet somehow managed to fund engagement photos at a luxury resort. My mother mentioned cutting back her therapy sessions due to cost, while simultaneously describing the custom mother-of-the-bride dress being made for her. Most concerning, I found myself increasingly excluded from family gatherings. Melissa's bridal shower, cake tastings, venue tours, I learned about these events afterward through social media or casual mentions. When I asked why I hadn't been included, the answers were always variations of, "We didn't want to bother you," or "We know how busy you are with work." Meanwhile, I continued paying the mortgage, property taxes, and contributing to medical expenses. Each month, the total approached $3,000, money I had originally planned to invest in a second property. 5 years into this arrangement, my contributions exceeded $160,000. 6 months before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off my mother's birthday gift. No cars were in the driveway, but lights were on inside. I used my key to enter, calling out as I stepped into the foyer. Voices from the dining room fell silent. When I rounded the corner, I found my parents seated with an older gentleman in a suit, papers spread across the table. "Heather, we weren't expecting you," my mother said, quickly gathering the documents into a folder. "Sorry to interrupt. I brought your birthday gift." I placed the wrapped package on the sideboard, eyeing the stranger. "This is Mr. Patterson," my father said reluctantly. "Our attorney. Just updating some paperwork." The man nodded politely, offering no further explanation. An awkward silence followed until my mother suggested we have coffee in the kitchen, effectively removing me from the dining room. As we waited for the coffee to brew, I noticed her nervous energy. Rearranging mugs, wiping already clean counters. Is everything okay? I asked. You're not having legal problems, are you? Nothing like that, she assured me quickly. Just getting some affairs in order. At our age, it's important to have everything properly documented. Before I could probe further, my father joined us, his expression unusually buoyant. Good news, Heather. You won't have to worry about the house anymore soon. What does that mean? My stomach tightened. Just that we're making some adjustments to simplify things, he replied vaguely. Nothing for you to concern yourself with now. The conversation shifted to safe topics, neighborhood news, my recent sales, Melissa's wedding plans. But as I drove home that evening, my father's words echoed uncomfortably. Something significant was happening, and I was deliberately being kept in the dark. Melissa's wedding day arrived on a perfect June Saturday. The historic Palmer House Hotel in downtown Chicago had been transformed with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and custom lighting that cost more than my first car. As a bridesmaid, I'd been at the venue since dawn, navigating the careful choreography of hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and my sister's frequent emotional outbursts over minor details. The champagne isn't properly chilled, she complained as I adjusted her veil. And the florist used cream roses when I specifically requested ivory. I bit my tongue, remembering my mother's plea that morning. Please help make this perfect for your sister. It's the most important day of her life. So I chilled champagne, soothed tensions between bridesmaids, and tracked down the wedding planner to address the catastrophic difference between cream and ivory roses. Through it all, I maintained a practiced smile, even as I calculated the approximate cost of each extravagance surrounding us. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly. Melissa looked genuinely beautiful in her designer gown, and Brandon appeared sincerely in love as they exchanged vows. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing tears with an embroidered handkerchief, my father beaming with pride. From the outside, we were the perfect American family celebrating a milestone. At the reception, I sat at the family table, making small talk with Brandon's relatives while nursing a single glass of champagne. I needed clarity for what I sensed was coming. Throughout the cocktail hour, I noticed my parents huddled with Brandon's family, sharing significant looks and whispered conversations. Whatever surprise they had planned, it would happen soon. After the main course, my father stood and tapped his glass for attention. The room quieted as he began a sentimental speech about watching his youngest daughter grow into the beautiful woman before us. He spoke about family legacy, the importance of strong foundations, and the joy of helping the next generation begin their journey. Which is why, he said, his voice thick with emotion, your mother and I are giving you our home as your wedding gift. The house where you grew up, where we've made so many memories, is now yours to fill with new ones. The room erupted in applause. Guests at nearby tables smiled approvingly, whispering about such a meaningful, generous gift. Melissa gasped theatrically, clutching Brandon's arm as tears streamed down her face. My mother wiped her own eyes while accepting congratulations from those around her. I sat motionless, the half-empty champagne flute trembling slightly in my hand. 5 years of mortgage payments, 60 monthly transfers, countless additional contributions for repairs, taxes, insurance. All for a house that had just been given away without a single word of consultation. Memories flashed through my mind. My mother's tearful gratitude when I first offered to help. My father's repeated assurances that the house will be yours someday. Weekends spent painting rooms, fixing leaky faucets, and maintaining the property I believed would eventually become mine. All while my sister lived her carefree life, showing up only for holidays and the occasional Sunday dinner. Through sheer force of will, I maintained my composure through dinner. I mechanically participated in toasts, smiled for photographs, and even managed to hug Melissa when she gushed about how totally amazing our parents' gift was. But when the dancing began and attention dispersed, I quietly gathered my things and slipped out a side entrance. Instead of going home, I drove directly to my parents' house, or what I now understood was my sister's house. I parked in the driveway and waited, knowing they would return there to change before leaving for their hotel downtown. The familiar structure loomed in the darkness, every window, shutter, and brick representing years of my sacrifice. They arrived shortly after midnight, still in their formal attire, expressions shifting from surprise to wariness when they spotted my car. I stepped out as they approached the front door. "Heather, why aren't you at the reception?" my mother asked, fumbling with her clutch. "We need to talk," I said simply, following them inside. In the living room, still decorated with pre-wedding photographs and gifts, I finally asked the question burning through me. "How could you give away a house I've been paying for without even discussing it with me?" My father loosened his tie, avoiding my gaze. "It's our house, Heather. We appreciated your help during our rough patch, but ultimately, it's our name on the deed." "Was your name on the checks I wrote every month for 5 years? Was your name on the statements for the new roof last year, or the property taxes I covered when you came up short?" "That was your choice," my mother interjected, her tone surprisingly cold. "We never forced you to help us. You said it would be my inheritance. You literally told me I was investing in my future." My father sighed heavily. "Plans change. Melissa and Brandon need a stable home to start their family. They can't afford something comparable in this neighborhood on their own. And I can? I've been putting my own financial goals on hold to help you." "You're already successful," my mother countered. "You have your condo, your career. Melissa needs this foundation to get started in life." The conversation deteriorated from there. Each justification they offered revealed a deeper betrayal. They had transferred the deed to Melissa and Brandon 2 months earlier, explaining the mysterious meeting with the attorney. They had used my recent contributions to clear the remaining mortgage balance before the transfer, approximately $12,000 I had provided specifically for medical bills and home repairs. Most devastating was their complete dismissal of my financial contributions as voluntary gifts rather than investments made under specific pretenses. When I mentioned the total sum, over $160,000, my father actually scoffed. "That's an exaggeration. And anyway, that's what family does. We support each other." "Apparently only when the family member is Melissa," I replied, gathering my purse. "I won't be supporting anyone in this family anymore." I drove home in tears, equal parts heartbroken and furious. The foundation of trust one thought existed with my parents had been revealed as completely illusory. For them, I had never been an equal child deserving of the same consideration as my sister. I was the reliable one, the successful one, the one who didn't need their support or loyalty. That night, as I curled on my sofa staring at the Chicago skyline through tear-blurred eyes, I realized I needed to completely recalibrate my understanding of my family and my place within it. The week following the wedding passed in a haze of work appointments and avoided phone calls. My parents called daily at first, then every few days, leaving voicemails that ranged from concerned to annoyed. Melissa texted once, thanking me for being part of her special day, with no mention of the house. I responded to none of them, needing space to process my emotions and determine my next steps. Work became my sanctuary. I scheduled showings back-to-back, conducted open houses on weekends, and volunteered for the listings no one else wanted. Colleagues commented on my sudden intensity, but I deflected with jokes about saving for a vacation. In reality, every property I walked through triggered painful comparisons to the home I'd financially maintained for years, now given away without consideration. Nights were harder. Sleep proved elusive as I mentally calculated the opportunity costs of my years supporting my parents. The down payment on an investment property I'd delayed. The retirement contributions I'd reduced. The professional development opportunities I'd passed on to maintain my monthly commitment to them. During one particularly sleepless night, I created a spreadsheet documenting every payment I'd made: mortgage contributions, property tax payments, home repairs, medical bills, even groceries and utilities I'd covered. The total exceeded $165,000 over 5 years. Seeing the figure in black and white crystallized my resolve. I needed professional advice. Samantha Ford, a financial advisor recommended by a colleague, reviewed my documentation during a Monday morning appointment. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but her questions revealed her assessment. Was there any written agreement regarding these contributions? Nothing formal, I admitted. It was a family arrangement, and the verbal understanding was that the house would eventually be yours? They said it repeatedly, that I was investing in my inheritance. She nodded, making notes. Unfortunately, without documentation, this falls into a gray area legally. You could potentially pursue a civil case based on verbal contract or unjust enrichment, but family court battles are expensive and emotionally draining. What would you recommend? Honestly, consider it an expensive lesson about mixing family and finances without proper documentation. Stop all financial support immediately, protect your assets going forward, and decide what kind of relationship you want with your family, with clear boundaries. Her advice, though difficult to hear, provided clarity. That evening, I drafted a detailed email to my parents. I listed every payment I'd made, explained my understanding of our arrangement, and formally announced the immediate termination of all financial support. The tone was businesslike rather than emotional, a final statement rather than an invitation to negotiate. Their response came within hours. A lengthy, emotional message that oscillated between defensive justification and manipulative guilt. My mother wrote most of it, emphasizing Melissa's needs versus my stability, invoking family loyalty, and suggesting I was being selfish for withdrawing support when they had given me life and raised me. My father added a brief paragraph expressing disappointment in my transactional view of family relationships. Neither acknowledged the fundamental betrayal or offered to address the financial implications of their actions. Reading between the lines, they expected our relationship to continue as before, minus my financial contributions, but with my emotional support intact. The email confirmed what I needed to know. Nothing would change unless I forced that change. Meanwhile, Melissa and Brandon moved into the house immediately after returning from their honeymoon in Bali. Her Instagram became a showcase of renovation projects. Tearing out the kitchen my parents had used for 30 years, replacing the backyard garden my mother had tenderly maintained with a hot tub and outdoor kitchen, painting over the growth chart marked on the laundry room wall that showed both our heights from childhood. Each modification felt like another erasure of my connection to the home. The most painful came 3 weeks after the wedding, a cheerful text with photos attached. Making big changes to your old bedroom. Want to come see before the contractors gut it completely? Rachel helped me maintain perspective during this period. We met weekly for coffee, her steady presence a counterbalance to the emotional turmoil. When I showed her Melissa's text, she took my phone and blocked my sister's number without comment, then returned it with a simple, "Not helpful right now." She was right. Distance was the only thing preserving my sanity as I reconstructed my understanding of my family relationships. I maintained the no-contact policy through June and into July, focusing instead on rebuilding my financial planning and reconnecting with friends I neglected while prioritizing family obligations. Then came the call that broke the silence. My father, using his office number I hadn't blocked, left a voicemail that seemed carefully casual. "Heather, it's Dad. Hope you're doing well. Your mother and I have been thinking about our living situation. The house is really too big for us now, and Melissa and Brandon are eager to have their privacy as newlyweds. We're considering options for the next few months. Let's catch up soon." The message contained no apology, no acknowledgement of our conflict, just a transparent hint about needing housing. I didn't return the call, but the voicemail haunted me. Were they genuinely being asked to leave the house they'd given away? Had they not considered their own living arrangements before making such a monumental decision? A second call came a week later, this time from my mother. "Sweetheart, we haven't heard from you in ages. We're having a small family dinner Sunday, and really hope you'll join us. There are some things we'd like to discuss about our future plans." Again, no reference to our conflict or my feelings, just an expectation that I would appear when summoned for family dinner. I declined via text, citing work commitments. The brief exchange opened the door to more messages, each containing vague references to their temporary living situation and suggestions that they might need a place to stay soon. The implication became increasingly clear. Having given away their home, My parents now expected to move into my vacation property, a small lakeside cottage in Michigan I'd purchased the previous year as both personal retreat and rental investment. The property represented one of the few financial goals I'd managed to achieve despite supporting them, purchased entirely with commissions from a particularly successful quarter. I had never explicitly told them they couldn't use it. In fact, before the wedding betrayal, I had considered offering it to them as a retirement option. Now, their presumption that it would automatically be available felt like another example of their entitlement to my resources, without reciprocal consideration. The anticipated direct request came on a Tuesday evening when my parents appeared unannounced at my condo. The doorman called up, and for a moment I considered declining the visit. But delaying the inevitable would only prolong the situation, so I agreed to see them. They arrived bearing peace offerings, my mother's homemade lasagna, and a bottle of wine we had once shared during a pleasant Christmas dinner. The familiar scents triggered unwelcome nostalgia as I led them to my dining area, deliberately not offering to take their coats, a small signal that this wasn't a social visit. After awkward small talk about the summer weather and neighborhood developments, my father cleared his throat. "Heather, we wanted to talk to you in person about our situation. As you know, the house is Melissa and Brandon's now, and they're understandably eager to make it their own. They've asked us to move out by the end of the month." 2 weeks from now, my mother clarified, her expression suggesting this timeline was unreasonable despite being 2 months after they had given away their home. "We've been looking at apartments," my father continued, "but rental prices in good neighborhoods are astronomical. And with your mother's health considerations, we need somewhere comfortable and accessible." I waited, knowing what was coming but refusing to make it easier by suggesting it myself. "We were thinking," my mother finally said, "about your lake house. It's just sitting empty most of the time, and the location would be perfect for your father's blood pressure. The doctors said a quieter environment would do wonders." The presumption left me momentarily speechless. After weeks of no meaningful contact following a major betrayal, they had arrived expecting access to my second property as though nothing had happened. No acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused, no recognition of the boundaries I'd established, not even a direct question, just an assumption of entitlement. "The lake house," I repeated slowly. "Just until we figure out something permanent," my father added quickly. 6 months, maybe a year at most. We wouldn't interfere with any rental plans you have for peak season." I thought about the lake house, a modest 3-bedroom cottage on a small Michigan lake. I had purchased it entirely with my own savings after years of disciplined financial planning. The weekends spent painting walls, replacing fixtures, and furnishing it with carefully selected pieces. The rental income that supplemented my commissions during slower real estate periods. The personal sanctuary it provided when city life became overwhelming. "That won't be possible," I said finally. My mother's expression shifted from expectant to confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean no. You can't stay at my lake house." "But it's just sitting empty most of the time," she persisted, as though I hadn't understood her point. "That's not relevant. It's my property, purchased with my money, and I don't want to change how I'm using it." My father leaned forward, brow furrowed. "Heather, you're being unnecessarily dramatic. We're talking about family helping family. After everything we've done for you." The audacity of his statement broke through my composed exterior. "After everything you've done for me? What about everything I've done for you? 5 years of mortgage payments, property taxes, home repairs, all with the understanding that I was investing in my future inheritance. An inheritance you gave to Melissa without a single conversation with me." "That's water under the bridge now," my mother said dismissively. "We need to focus on current solutions. The current solution is that you find an apartment you can afford, just like any other adults would do in your situation." They exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for firm resistance. My father adopted the conciliatory tone he used when negotiating. "Look, I understand you're still upset about the house. But this is different. We're not asking you to give us the lake property, just to let us stay there temporarily. I need time to think about this," I said, standing to signal the end of our conversation. "I'll let you know my decision later this week." After they left, I immediately called Rachel, who arrived 30 minutes later with reinforcements, our mutual friend Julia Stevens, and a bottle of tequila. As I recounted the conversation, their expressions shifted from disbelief to indignation. "The absolute nerve," Rachel said, pouring another round of drinks. "They give away a house you've been paying for, then expect to move into your vacation property? In what universe does that make sense?" Julia nodded vigorously. "My father tried something similar after my parents divorced. Gave their savings to my brother for his business, then expected to move in with me, temporarily when he couldn't afford his apartment. These patterns don't change unless you establish firm boundaries." "Which is exactly what you need to do," Rachel added. "Clear, unmovable boundaries with consequences they understand." Together, we drafted my response, a firm but respectful refusal that acknowledged their situation without accepting responsibility for it. The key points: I would not offer my lake house as either temporary or permanent housing, I would not resume financial support, and any future relationship would depend on their recognition of the betrayal and steps toward making amends. 3 days later, I met my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop midway between our homes. The public setting was deliberate, minimizing the possibility of an emotional scene. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered some privacy, without complete isolation. They entered together, my mother scanning the shop anxiously while my father maintained his usual confident posture. The contrast between their demeanor and mine, I had dressed professionally and brought notes, established the tone immediately. This was a negotiation, not a family chat. "I've considered your request," I began after minimal greetings, "and my answer is no. I won't be offering the lake house as a residence for you, either temporarily or permanently." My mother's face fell. "But where are we supposed to go?" "That's a question you should have considered before giving away your home," I replied evenly. "There are many apartments available in your price range, particularly if you consider suburbs further from the city center." "We've raised you better than this," my father said, anger edging his voice. "Family takes care of family." I agree completely. "For 5 years, I took care of my family by paying your mortgage, covering your property taxes, and helping with medical bills. That commitment ended when you gave away the house without consulting me, using my own money to clear the remaining mortgage for Melissa's benefit." I slid a folder across the table containing printouts of rental listings in their budget. "These are all available immediately and would work with your current income. I've also included information about senior housing developments that offer amenities suited to your needs." My mother pushed the folder away without opening it. "We're not seniors. We're your parents who need your help during a transition period. A transition you created by giving away your stable housing situation. I'm setting a boundary. I will not provide housing for you, nor will I resume financial support. Any future relationship depends on your acknowledgement of how your actions impacted me and steps toward making amends." My father's face had reddened during my statement. "So that's it? Turn your back on family because of money?" "This isn't about money. It's about respect, consideration, and honesty, all of which were missing when you made decisions that directly affected me without any discussion." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, cycling through familiar patterns. They minimized my feelings, emphasized family obligation, and attempted to reframe their actions as normal parental prerogative. I maintained my position calmly but firmly, eventually standing to end the discussion. "My decision is final. I hope you find suitable housing soon." The fallout was immediate and widespread. That evening, Melissa called from a new number, bypassing my block. Her voice trembled with indignation as she accused me of leaving our parents homeless and being jealous of her happiness. When I attempted to explain my perspective, she interrupted with, "Brandon and I would never treat family this way," before hanging up. Extended family members took sides after my parents shared their carefully edited version of events. Aunts and uncles who had never expressed interest in my life suddenly sent messages questioning my character and reminding me of family loyalty. Cousins I barely spoke with shared vague social media posts about supporting parents in their golden years that were clearly directed at me. I responded exactly once, sending a group email to extended family detailing the 5 years of financial support I had provided and the circumstances of the house transfer. The message ended with a request for privacy during this family matter and a clear statement that I would not engage in further public discussion. Then I blocked numbers, muted social media accounts, and focused on rebuilding my life without the weight of unjust expectations. The initial pain was intense, but each day brought increasing clarity about the unhealthy dynamics I had accepted for years. For perhaps the first time, I was prioritizing my own well-being over others' unreasonable demands, and despite the difficulty, it felt like breathing freely after years underwater. 2 months passed with minimal contact. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned my parents had found a 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb 15 miles from their former home. Melissa posted fewer renovation updates, suggesting the initial enthusiasm had waned once reality set in. My own life settled into new patterns, more frequent use of my lake house as personal retreat, deeper investment in friendships that had suffered during years of family obligation, and renewed focus on professional growth. The distance proved healing. Without constant family demands, I rediscovered interests I'd abandoned, taking weekend painting classes, joining a book club, even dating casually for the first time in years. My therapy sessions shifted from crisis management to long-term personal development. Most importantly, I began recognizing patterns from my family relationships that had affected all my interactions. The tendency to overfunction, difficulty setting boundaries, and habit of placing others' needs above my own. Work success continued and expanded. In September, I won a competitive listing for a historic mansion conversion project, multiple luxury condos in a landmark building. The commission would substantially increase my annual income, validating my decision to focus on career advancement rather than continued family support. On a crisp October morning, as I reviewed marketing materials for the new listing in my downtown office, my assistant knocked tentatively. "There's a Richard Williams here to see you."
"No appointment."
"He says he's your father." My immediate instinct was refusal, but something in her expression gave me pause. "How does he seem?" She hesitated. "Nervous. Maybe a little sad. He said he understands if you're busy, but hoped you might have time for lunch." The unexpected nature of the visit intrigued me. My father had always preferred phone calls to face-to-face conversations, especially for difficult topics. His presence at my office suggested an importance beyond our usual interactions. "Tell him I can spare 30 minutes. If the conversation warrants more time, we can continue over lunch." My father entered cautiously, looking older than I remembered. His normally impeccable appearance showed subtle signs of decline: slightly rumpled shirt, hair less perfectly combed, new lines around his eyes. He carried a small gift bag that he placed carefully on my desk. "Your mother's homemade brownies," he explained with an awkward smile. I remembered they were your favorite. I thanked him, but didn't open the bag, instead gesturing toward the visitor's chair. "This is unexpected. I've been wanting to talk to you for weeks, but wasn't sure you'd take my call." He settled into the chair, hands fidgeting uncharacteristically. "Things haven't been right since the wedding." "Since before that, really." "No, they haven't," I agreed, maintaining a neutral tone. He took a deep breath. "I've come to apologize, Heather. I made terrible mistakes that hurt you deeply, and I need to take responsibility for that." The directness surprised me. My father rarely admitted error, typically preferring to reframe situations to maintain his position. I remained silent, allowing him space to continue. "The house situation was handled incredibly poorly. You deserved consultation, consideration, and appreciation for everything you'd contributed. Instead, we excluded you from decisions and dismissed your feelings afterward." "Why?" The question had burned within me for months. He sighed heavily. "The simple answer is that your mother orchestrated most of it, and I failed to stand up for what was right. The longer answer is complicated." Over the next hour, my father revealed the background I hadn't been privy to. My mother had always favored Melissa, seeing in her the social success she herself had never achieved. When Brandon entered the picture with his family connections and wealth, she became determined to secure the relationship, believing a suitable wedding gift would impress his family and cement Melissa's position. I knew it was wrong, my father admitted, especially after everything you'd done for us. I tried suggesting alternatives, helping with a down payment on a different house, offering financial support that wouldn't involve your inheritance. But your mother was fixated on the symbolic value of giving them our family home. And you went along with it. I did. That's my failure entirely. His voice cracked slightly. I've spent my life avoiding conflict with your mother, even when it meant treating you unfairly. That pattern goes back to your childhood, and I never had the courage to break it. The honesty was both validating and painful. All those years of feeling less valued had been based in reality, not my imagination. The favoritism had been intentional, not circumstantial. What's changed now? I asked. Why this apology after months of silence? Several things. Living in the apartment has given me perspective on what we gave up and what we took from you. Melissa and Brandon are already having problems, making me question the sacrifice. Most importantly, I've started therapy on my own. It's helping me see patterns I was blind to before. He reached across the desk, not quite touching my hand, but bridging some of the distance between us. I don't expect immediate forgiveness, Heather. What we did, caused real harm. I just want you to know I recognize that now, and I'm working to be better. The lunch that followed felt like a conversation with a new person rather than the father I'd known all my life. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, my friends, my interests, topics that had rarely held his attention previously. He shared updates about his part-time consulting work and new connections in their apartment community. Most notably, he mentioned attending some social events without my mother, developing independence that had been absent in their relationship. What about Mom? I finally asked as we finished our meals. Does she share your perspective on what happened? His expression tightened. Not entirely. She recognizes we handled things poorly, but still believes the decision itself was correct. She's struggling with the consequences, both the reduced living circumstances and your distance. I can't resume a relationship that doesn't acknowledge the fundamental problem. I understand. I'm working on her, but ultimately, her journey is separate from mine. I'm here because I need to make things right regardless of her choices. We parted with a tentative plan to meet monthly for lunch. A small step toward rebuilding trust without immediately resuming full family participation. As I watched him walk away, his shoulders straighter than when he'd arrived, I felt a complicated mixture of emotions, lingering hurt but also cautious hope that genuine change might be possible. 2 weeks later, my mother reached out, not with the heartfelt apology my father had offered, but with a stiff invitation to lunch at her favorite restaurant. I accepted with clear boundaries about what the meeting would and wouldn't include. No discussion of financial help. No pressure about family obligations. Simply an opportunity to begin addressing our fractured relationship. The lunch proved challenging. My mother arrived impeccably dressed as always, her armor of perfect appearance intact. Her greeting was affectionate but controlled, with none of the vulnerability my father had shown. Your father says I need to acknowledge the misunderstanding about the house, she began after our orders were placed. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I corrected gently. It was a betrayal of trust and an erasure of my contributions. She flinched slightly, but continued. Perhaps we didn't handle it as transparently as we should have. For that, I apologize. The words were right, but the sentiment behind them felt hollow. Throughout the meal, she maintained the narrative that giving Melissa the house had been the correct decision, poorly executed rather than fundamentally flawed. She acknowledged my feelings were hurt, but stopped short of accepting responsibility for causing that hurt. Families go through difficult periods, she concluded as we finished dessert. I hope we can move forward now. It wasn't the reconciliation I had hoped for, but it represented a small step. My mother had made an effort, however limited, to repair the relationship. I could acknowledge that effort while maintaining my boundaries and continuing to assess whether deeper healing was possible. Meanwhile, signs of trouble in Melissa's perfect life began appearing on social media. The enthusiastic renovation posts gave way to vague statements about challenges and growth opportunities. A mutual acquaintance mentioned hearing arguments during a dinner party at the house. Brandon was photographed at a charity event without Melissa, standing noticeably close to his former girlfriend. The house itself began showing signs of neglect. When I drove past one evening out of curiosity, I noticed peeling paint on the shutters, overgrown landscaping, and a broken gutter that had clearly been damaged for some time. The property that had been meticulously maintained during my parents' ownership, with significant financial help from me, was visibly deteriorating under my sister's care. I took no pleasure in these developments, but they provided context for my father's next visit. Over coffee at a neighborhood cafe, he mentioned that Brandon's family business was facing investigation for tax irregularities, creating financial strain in the marriage. They've started arguing about money, he explained. Melissa expected Brandon's family to cover the renovation costs, but that support has disappeared with the legal troubles. Now they're facing contractor bills with limited resources. That's unfortunate, I said neutrally. Your mother is finally seeing the situation clearly, he continued. She built up this fantasy about Melissa marrying into security and stability. Now she's watching that crumble while recognizing she's sacrificed her relationship with you for it. The insight explained my mother's unexpected call the following week, a voice message with audible tears asking if we could talk again. The subsequent conversation, while still guarded on both sides, contained her first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I convinced myself that helping Melissa secure her future was worth any cost, she admitted. I didn't allow myself to see how unfair that was to you. I'm truly sorry, Heather. The words I had longed to hear for months arrived without the complete healing I had imagined. The apology mattered, but trust would require more than words to rebuild. Still, it opened the door to possibilities I had previously considered closed, a new relationship with my parents based on mutual respect rather than obligation and exploitation. 6 months after the wedding that had shattered our family structure, I stood in the entryway of my newly purchased home in Lincoln Park. The 3-bedroom Victorian had required significant renovation but now reflected my aesthetic perfectly. Warm colors, modern conveniences blended with historical elements, and space for both entertaining and quiet retreat. The purchase represented more than just a real estate investment. It symbolized my commitment to creating my own legacy rather than waiting for an inheritance that might never materialize. The down payment had come from my commission on the historic mansion project, which had been even more successful than anticipated. My promotion to senior partner at the firm followed, bringing additional financial security and professional recognition. My lake house had transformed as well. Once viewed primarily as an investment property with occasional personal use, it had become my sanctuary during the family crisis. Weekend trips expanded to week-long retreats during slower business periods. I added a dedicated office space that allowed remote work, personalized the decor beyond generic rental appeal, and cultivated relationships with year-round neighbors. Perhaps most significantly, my social connections flourished once freed from constant family obligations. Weekly dinners with Rachel evolved to include a wider circle of friends with similar interests and values. I joined professional organizations I'd previously neglected, building a network of colleagues who appreciated my expertise and supported my career advancement. Regular therapy sessions helped me recognize and address patterns established in childhood, the excessive responsibility I assumed, difficulty expressing needs, and tendency to anticipate others' requirements before my own. Gradually, these awareness led to behavioral changes. Setting clear boundaries, communicating expectations directly, and allowing myself to receive support rather than always providing it. My relationship with my parents evolved into a carefully structured arrangement. Monthly lunches with my father became a consistent bright spot, his genuine efforts to understand my perspective creating space for authentic connection. He maintained his individual therapy, developing independence that transformed our interactions from parent-child dynamics to adult relationships. My mother proved more challenging. Initial progress after her tearful apology stalled as she struggled to fully acknowledge the damage caused by decades of favoritism. Our contact remained limited to occasional lunches and brief phone calls, always with clear boundaries about acceptable topics. The distance felt necessary for my well-being, even as I hoped for eventual deeper reconciliation. Melissa and I established minimal communication. After several months of silence, she sent a text suggesting coffee to clear the air. The resulting conversation revealed little self-awareness about her role in the family dysfunction, but at least acknowledged that I had legitimate grievances about the house situation. We settled into polite distance, birthday messages, holiday acknowledgments, but no pretense of close sisterhood. Her marriage to Brandon encountered increasing difficulties as the initial glow faded. His family's legal troubles resulted in significant lifestyle adjustments, creating tension between them. The house became a point of contention rather than joy, too expensive to maintain properly on their reduced income, but impossible to sell without admitting failure. Social media posts grew less frequent and less enthusiastic, occasionally revealing glimpses of the crumbling facade. One unusually warm spring afternoon, I received an unexpected email from my mother. Rather than the usual brief updates or attempts at reconciliation, this contained a lengthy, thoughtful reflection on our family history. She wrote about recognizing patterns in her own upbringing that she had unconsciously perpetuated, acknowledged the damage her favoritism had caused, and expressed genuine remorse for the house betrayal. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for the family, she wrote, but I was actually protecting my own vision of what our family should be. That vision cost me my relationship with my remarkable elder daughter, a price I now understand was far too high. The email concluded with a request for family therapy, not to erase the past but to create healthier patterns for the future. After consultation with my individual therapist, I agreed to a trial session, approaching the opportunity with cautious optimism tempered by protective boundaries. The first session proved surprisingly productive. With professional guidance, my father expanded on insights from his individual therapy. My mother listened without defensive interruption for perhaps the first time in our relationship, and I articulated long-suppressed feelings without either minimization or excessive anger. We left with homework, specific communication exercises and reflection questions, and a commitment to continue the process. Progress came incrementally over subsequent months. Some sessions yielded significant breakthroughs. Others devolved into familiar patterns requiring redirection from our therapist. Gradually, however, new understanding emerged. My parents acknowledged the impact of their actions more fully. I recognized complexities in their motivations beyond simple favoritism. Together, we identified healthier ways to interact while respecting established boundaries. My personal life flourished during this period of family reconstruction. A casual introduction through a colleague led to meeting Jake Thompson, an architectural photographer whose work complemented my real estate expertise. Our relationship developed with refreshing straightforwardness, clear communication about expectations, mutual respect for professional commitments, and shared appreciation for quiet evenings rather than social whirlwinds. Most importantly, Jake demonstrated consistent respect for my boundaries. When I explained my complex family situation and the importance of maintaining certain protective measures, he listened without judgment or pressure. His own experience with challenging family dynamics created natural empathy, while his healthy relationship with his parents provided a model of what balanced adult family connections could look like. By the following Christmas, 18 months after the wedding that had fractured our family, we had established a new normal. Holiday dinner took place at my home rather than my parents' apartment or Melissa's house, creating neutral territory. Gift exchanges remained modest, focusing on thoughtfulness rather than extravagance. Conversations stayed within agreed boundaries, avoiding triggers that might resurrect old conflicts. Melissa and Brandon attended, their relationship visibly strained despite attempts at holiday cheer. The house that had been the center of our family drama was now up for sale, their marriage unable to withstand the financial pressures and underlying resentments. Neither acknowledged the irony directly, but my father's knowing glance across the table communicated volumes about lessons learned too late. Looking back on the tumultuous journey from betrayal to tentative healing, I recognize now that the house itself was never the central issue. It simply crystallized patterns established throughout my childhood. The imbalanced family system, unequal expectations, and dismissal of my needs in favor of my sister's wants. The painful experience forced confrontation with dynamics that might otherwise have continued indefinitely, creating opportunity for growth even through tremendous hurt. The greatest lesson emerged gradually. True family relationships cannot be purchased through financial contribution or maintained through obligation alone. Authentic connection requires mutual respect, honest communication, and recognition of each person's inherent value beyond what they provide materially. My willingness to financially support my parents created an illusion of closeness that collapsed when tested by conflicting interests. Equally important was learning that boundaries aren't selfish, but essential for healthy relationships. By clearly defining what I would and wouldn't accept, I created space for genuine healing rather than superficial reconciliation. Those boundaries allowed me to maintain connection with my parents while protecting myself from further exploitation, a balance that benefited everyone involved. Perhaps most valuable was the realization that self-advocacy doesn't require abandoning compassion. I could stand firm in my own worth while still extending understanding toward my parents' limitations. Their actions caused real harm, but recognizing the complex factors behind those actions allowed me to move toward forgiveness without diminishing the importance of accountability. Today, as I build my life with intentionality rather than obligation, I understand that family relationships require ongoing maintenance rather than assumed permanence. The bonds we share with relatives deserve nurturing through mutual respect and clear communication, not automatic loyalty, regardless of treatment. This understanding influences all my relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and potential partners. The journey continues, with occasional setbacks alongside significant progress. Some family gatherings still activate old patterns. Some conversations still navigate carefully around sensitive topics. But the foundation has shifted from unquestioned sacrifice to balanced reciprocity, creating space for authentic connection rather than performance of expected roles. If my story resonates with you, consider examining the unspoken expectations in your own family relationships. Are you giving from genuine love or obligation? Are your contributions recognized and reciprocated? Most importantly, do your family dynamics support your growth or limit your potential? The answers may reveal patterns worth addressing before they culminate in painful confrontation. What family expectations have you struggled with? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize unhealthy patterns in your own relationships, please like and subscribe for more insights on family dynamics and personal growth. Remember that prioritizing your well-being isn't selfish. It's the foundation for building truly healthy connections with others. Thank you for joining me on this journey.